So last time on Cinematic Perspective, we were talking about the analog era, the pre-digital times, like before 2000, when we were shooting film and using magnetic tape and reel-to-reel recorders and VHS and all that good fun stuff. And I think we left off where we were starting to discuss our first impressions and our first encounters with digital.
Digital, yeah.
And I know I mentioned, like, in about 1998, I had friends who were starting to shoot digital video that was starting to look very cinematic. That was starting to look very film-like. And then I had an experience in 2000 working on Mission Impossible 2 where I could see the window starting to shrink, where we were starting to do digital stuff that could be put into the film very last minute. And so then we started to cross over from that film realm into the digital realm, and just the digital realm across the board, be it computers, social media, telecommunications technology, personal recording devices like cameras and such. I mean, it just, what a revolution. When you stop and think about, how technology moves and how, 120 years ago we weren't flying, and then, 60 or so years later we were on the moon.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
We went to, supersonic intercontinental transports, and now we're, we have private space travel where tourists are actually going into space. It's just the curve of how fast it starts to move. It really is future shock. It really is, I literally now have a tricorder. I have a Star Trek tricorder, basically. I have a cell phone which is connected theoretically to everything in the world and will take beautiful film or images and video, and it will connect me to everything, and I can communicate with everything with this little handheld device in my pocket.
Let's go back. You were saying it was 1999 for you. Around that time, 1999, 2000 was where I was lucky enough to get a place at UCLA, and I was actually originally coming across as an exchange student for a year to study cinematography. I had an opportunity to get a digital camera, which I remember it, and I still have it. It's a Ricoh camera. It was like $4,000-$5,000 at the time, and I got it because I could take a photo of a page, and I could read the details. Something that you could do with any cell phone now. And my idea was, since I was going to be in the States, I was hoping to go into some of the archives in the libraries, but I couldn't take a flat screen, scanner to scan books that I wouldn't get a hold of ever again. So my idea was to take a little tripod, set up the camera, and take photos. And this is back in the day of having like compact flash cards, which no one uses anymore. One of the things that this camera could do was these really low-grade MPEG movies.
Mm-hmm.
And to my surprise, I would carry this camera around everywhere, and I would take photos. I was documenting what I was doing, as well as trying to go and look, if I could find an old book on, let's say, visual effects or in-camera matting or something that I wouldn't be able to get access to that's in an archive, I would take photos of the relevant information, and then I'll put it into my own archive, or literally now, I actually share a lot of that stuff out on archive.org,
right,
which is such a great site. Because you never know what kind of nugget you come across, and you're like, damn, I really kind of wish that I could have gone to a Xerox or whatever the situation was. So that was my big sell. But I remember being in cinematography class and pulling out my camera at one point and going, hey, actually, I can make a video image of this right now. And I think it was like 640 by 640 or something. It was like really, really small and tight. And I remember the cinematography professor going, damn, that's my career gone. Like, you just shot some stuff and then you plugged it into your computer and now we're watching it. Now, where's the color timing? Where's the processing? Where's this? Where's that? I mean, it didn't look great, but it was one of those situations where we were focusing already on things like pulling mats using After Effects.
Right.
But that idea of going from camera straight was just something that there was a technical binder as such, or border, that hadn't been crossed. And I just remember Tom looking at me going, okay, you were the one who came in and just knocked that wall down and just went, okay, I got this thing, and we're able to go and produce something, and we can play with it, and we can edit it, and we can do whatever we need to do. It was interesting. He was very open to it. Other people were like, nah, the quality's crap. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to shoot 35.
I think the disciplines and the two different disciplines between analog and digital, I think I want to come back to a couple of times. I want to come back to it again towards the end, because I think we can make a better case for why the discipline matters so much. But I know that early on, I personally, it's like I was adopting it. I started getting involved in independent films, say as early as 2002, 2003, that were being shot digitally. But obviously there were still some limitations. The resolution was a limitation. The frame rate in terms of progressive versus interlaced shooting.
Right. Yeah. There was none of that.
The progressive was kind of the holy grail because, interlaced was like old television with like the scan lines interlaced, and you could tell it looked like video. And then progressive was a single, pristine image that was more film-like.
One after the other.
But film was still 24 frames per second, and the best I could get it in video for a long time was 30 frames per second. It was progressive, so it looked more film-like, but it still was on that video cusp. But I kept looking forward. I kept looking forward to, okay, last year it was standard def, it was 30 interlaced, and it looked like shit. This year it's 30p, it's true 16 by 9, and it looks better, and the contrast range is better. And then I heard about cameras on the horizon, so I kind of kept my eye on where it was going and kept involved, hoping that it would advance and turn into something, primarily because as indie filmmakers, we don't have the money to shoot film. And we don't have the money to shoot film on a professional level. And film to me is funny because you get guys like Steven Spielberg and Christopher Nolan. I think I've made this comment before. Christopher Nolan and Steven Spielberg say things like, you can have my film camera when you pry it out of my dead hands.
Yeah, but their film stock costs are not coming out of their own pocket. Their production costs are not coming out of their own pocket.
Exactly. And they're not developing film. They're not loading mags. They're not worried about whether or not this stuff has a scratch on it or whether it gets developed properly. They're not dealing with it.
If they need to do 50 takes, they get the same amount of pay. It's the producer's issue. I do want to just jump back really quickly because it's really interesting that you touched upon the frame rate and the progressive on digital cameras. One of my side jaunts when I got to UCLA was people kept coming up to me and saying, hey, did you bring your video camera with you? And I said, why? And they go, well, in Australia, don't you guys shoot PAL? And PAL was a 25 frames a second interlaced image as opposed to NTSC, which was used in the US, which is 29 point and a whole bunch of numbers. So they rounded up basically to 30. And students and independent filmmakers wanted to shoot closer to the 24 frame rate as opposed to 30 frames. So if you actually watch a movie on television in the US or in a system that uses NTSC, they've actually had to double up certain frames to make sure that the system, it's all working at the way it was designed.
They call it the 3-2 pull down. The 3-2 pull down. They add in phantom frames, 6 phantom frames per second, so that it is compatible. Yeah.
And if you happen to be really aware of what's in the frame, and I noticed this quite a few times when I watched movies that I was really kind of intimate with, I could tell that the timing was off on certain edits because of these. It's an extra second.
Oh yeah.
I think it is every few minutes. So people were like, when you go back to Australia, can you buy this camera for me in Australia and then bring it back with you? And I'll buy a charger and a converter for, so I can charge the batteries. And that was a way of being able to finish video projects and have a more cinematic look to it.
That's interesting. I'd never even thought about that the 25 would have been closer to the 24.
Because if you could get the right transfer cadence, if you could work with a company or if you had the device to ultimately transfer it, if you could conform it, then you were only losing a frame per second. You were creating an ever so slightly slow motion effect, but that was so indiscernible that no one would know. And there would be a very unnoticeable pitch shift in all the audio and stuff because you were taking 25 and stretching it out a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an option.
Hey there, film lovers. I hope you're really enjoying this episode of Cinematic Perspective, but I wanted to take a moment out and share with you a brand new project I'm super excited about. It's called Spectacular Distraction, where I uncover hidden gems and forgotten classics from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. The movies and shows that shaped pop culture, but somehow slipped through the cracks. Remember those films that only aired once or twice, disappeared completely, but got stuck in your head? We'll find them, break them down. The rip-offs, the inspirations, and we'll go through and find out all the different pieces that are missing from cinema today. So if you're as obsessed with cinema and pop culture as I am, come on a nostalgic journey with me. Search for Spectacular Distraction on YouTube, hit subscribe, and never miss out on a hidden gem, deep dives, or iconic moments. Because everything else is just spectacular distraction.
This brings to mind this whole concept of, and a good friend of mine who's a cinematographer here in the United States, we talk about it a lot. The lengths that we went to achieve a cinematic look. You're talking about the PAL 25 as an option to shooting NTSC. I remember that, he and I, we wanted shallow depth of field. And when you're talking about a tiny, tiny little format, and you're talking about these fixed lenses on these cameras, then we were doing crazy stuff like backing off 20 feet and zooming in all the way so that we were just framing part of a person so that we could throw the background out of focus because there was like no other way to do it. And we would do these crazy, crazy things, which in 35 millimeter photography, it would just be, well, give me the 50 millimeter or give me the 85 and we'll just slap that on and that background will fall to nothing. But in digital video, we wanted to achieve cinema without having all the devices of cinema. Now, I know friends who, and this is a great debate, and this will become a greater debate as we go forward in time. I know friends who look at digital and they feel, well, it's digital. Embrace it for what it is. Why not just go ahead and shoot 30p? Why not go ahead and just embrace the look and just sell it like that? I mean, it's going to end up 30 frames per second on television anyway. It's going to be this, it's going to be that. Why not just embrace it and call it what it is? It's better than the old soap opera look. It's not quite cinema. It's its own new thing. And I understand the approach, but I think the problem is
why try and force video to look like film?
Exactly. Like there are people I know who are saying, embrace it for what it is. This is not this. This is something else. This is not this. And I get that, but because film is so pervasive, because our impression of film is so strongly guided by the gigantic films, the gigantic film series, the most successful things, some of the most influential things in media, in history, have been movies. And you see movies, 24 frames of life at a time and per second. And so I think I admire the spirit. I think it's an uphill battle.
And you saying that too, it's like, the idea, even though we are indie filmmakers, we don't have the budgets that the big studios have, we're still going to be judged by our audience based on what they are used to from the studios.
Such a great point.
Why doesn't this look like Raiders of the Lost Ark? Because I didn't have $20 million and I didn't have 78 days to shoot it in? That's why it doesn't look like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, I actually remember doing an indie film and someone said, the street in Batman, when it opens up? I go, yeah, he goes, do that. And I go, you give me one light. And it was like a little video light. I'm like, you get this much. That's it. I mean, if you want that, I can organize it for you, but you're going to be looking at 20 grand's worth of lighting equipment. So that wasn't because people don't realize the amount of, manipulation of the image that goes in to create something that pops that way.
Like I said last time around, why doesn't my stuff look like Star Wars?
Sure.
Well, I didn't have the same toys.
We were talking recently about this new street light that went up in front of our house. Like they changed the bulbs out, and
they swapped out the old sodium vapor for like an LED square of like multiple large size LEDs.
And this thing, I mean, it's like the light just comes streaming into our living room, and it's amazingly bright. And it's also an amazing movie light because it lights up, what, 3-4 houses worth of the street?
We actually shot some exterior driving shots for our little film project we're working on of her Mini Cooper going past us on the street at night. And I realized, like, I had gone into pre-production thinking, how am I going to shoot these shots of the car driving down the street at night? Well, in the meantime, they put up this new LED street light. And I remember one day going, oh, well, shoot, my camera can shoot by that light. That light's brilliant. We'll augment a couple of lights and boom. It was like they came and lit the street for us for cinematography.
So I'm sorry, I just derailed
That's
us,
okay.
but
it
you
was
talking
funny.
about
It
trying
was
to
funny.
light up a street made me think about
was fun.
that.
And that's why you can see that, like, the latest lighting kits are all LED lights because there's very little heat, there's very little energy used, and there's, you know, these LED lights, now you can even change the color temperature without having to change bulbs. They are awesome.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But I wanted to go back. You made an interesting point about, like, embracing digital video for what it is. I think a lot of what the work that I do in pre-production on my films is simply to give the audience a place where they're not going, that doesn't feel like film, therefore I'm not going to immerse myself in what the story is being told. And I've seen that happen on a number of projects, not just my own, but other people's too, where they go, yeah, I couldn't get into it because the lighting was harsh or there was too much, you know, I didn't feel comfortable. It wasn't what I expected as a part of the presentation. And I mean, that can go simply to, let's say, doing titles in Photoshop. I know, a trick that I use is I put a little bit of motion blur on all my titles just to soften it a bit so that it is creating, and I'm talking like 1 or 2 pixel softening, you know, with a motion blur or Gaussian blur, just so that you have that idea or that feeling that if you were watching this in a cinema, you have that reflected light. So it's not, the edges aren't as crisp, but you have that natural drop off.
Some of our digital scrolling titles, I have introduced a slight bit of motion blur into the scrolling titles.
Because otherwise it feels like...
Because otherwise it strobes. And movie titles don't strobe. So yeah,
strobe.
Subtle tricks, yeah.
These are all really subtle constructs that say to the audience member, this is a film. This is where, you know, you're going to sit back for, an hour, 20 minutes, or 3 hours, or whatever it is, and we're going to take you on a ride, and you are going to know what it is that we're going to be, you know, presenting to you. There's a reason why visual effects, especially in the tentpole movies, the Marvel movies, and all these things that are coming out now, live to a certain level. You can composite lots and lots of really amazing imagery and lightning and all the rest of it. I'm just thinking for some of the Thor films, like some of that stuff would be incredibly overpowering, but they actually have to put on layers of diffusion and dust. And we were talking about this previously, just so the audience doesn't go, whoa, hang on, what was that? Oh, I'm watching a movie. Like I'm now taken out of the experience. So there's a fine line when actually using, let's say, digital technology, because I don't think, and I don't really believe that the audience is ready for digital technology. And we've also touched on this before. All the information coming from a digital image, if you're watching an IMAX digital projection, or you're watching one of those, you know, stadium screen digital projectors, the information that's being kind of bounced back at you is all active, which is why I find a lot of audiences are very, what's the term I should use? They're very engaged in what's going on, but not in the way you would like them to be. So I see a lot of audiences fidgeting around or getting up and going to the bathroom or turning and talking to someone because you can't constantly have that bombardment of information going straight into your eye, which is connected to your brain, without it stimulating other things. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens with the generation that grows up playing all these games, looking at YouTube and TikTok, because you can already see their concentration is like 3 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, look at what happened with the emergence of MTV. I mean, we had a certain kind of commercial revolution where, you know, ads were becoming more high concept. R. Greenberg and Associates did like the Levi's trademark commercial in the 1970s where you had the electric environment where they were walking down the street and the guy was walking the Levi's trademark commercial down the street.
With the logo?
Yeah, the logo. And then there were other commercials that came along, and then Ridley Scott with his, was it Apple 1984 George Orwell style commercial that was so shocking and so revolutionary that it like almost alienated people, and they didn't show it very often because it was so stunning. But then by the mid 80s, you've got people ingesting a steady diet of 3-minute short films set to a musical
videos,
beat.
yeah.
Which then commercials wanted to be music videos, and commercials had to have pop songs integrated. And then films had almost like music video segue sequences. And so we started like turning up the dial. Like I can handle 2 edits per second, or two edits per minute. Now I can handle 5 edits per minute. Now I can handle 15 edits per minute. No, wait, we're going to give you multiple edits per second. Let me turn that up. And yeah, so we've just been slowly, feeding all that.
It's kind of funny you should say that, because when I was in film school, we had, James Wan, who went on to do Saw and a lot of the other films, he would cut incredibly quickly. And the joke was that if James ever went into the adult film industry, you wouldn't see anything because it'll be cut into 200 other things, and you'd be like, "What the hell has happened?" And we used to I think we did on like a Christmas. We kind of took some footage and just cut it really quickly, and you couldn't really see anything that was going on. And we're like, a James Wan film. I don't know if he really appreciated that, but it was the point that we were trying to make was, there's a dynamic shift away from seeing what's going on. You've got to have the camera moving. You got to keep feeding interest. And in fact, I was actually talking to someone on YouTube who makes YouTube videos, and they'll do things like really slow pan-ins when people are talking. Right. Because if you leave the shot locked off, people get bored. Or they will have multiple different takes, and you go, "Why are you shooting behind you? You just crossed the 180 line." And they're like, "The audience doesn't care. I'm just trying to keep them there so I can get a little bit more, watch time." And you kind of go, what if you just had content? Yeah. What if you just created something that wasn't just filling in time?
And while Gil is talking on this one, when we edit it, we're just going to do a real slow push on him.
Yeah. Push in, because it's like right up my nose.
We're going to digitally treat him so he looks like Max Headroom, and he's going to be talking to us. The idea of the stylization, I mean, the best films that you look back through history, the best films are all of the above. They're beautiful content, they're brilliant composition, they're great editing, they're all things combined. But I remember, I'll fully admit, it was a few years back, Gayle and I worked on, it was a contest essentially, but what we were basically doing for explanation purposes is we were doing a re-election commercial for Mayor Slay, who was the mayor of St. Louis for a period of time here. And he got re-election, but we were entering this contest where we were doing a re-elect Mayor Slay commercial.
Basically, he had a whole bunch of people in a contest, but he got a commercial done on spec.
So, and we won, actually. We won a couple of awards. We got a technical award and some other awards. And we won some money, and everybody went out to dinner that night. But I told people on the crew, I said, we are going to Michael Bay the shit out of this. And every single shot in the film was in dynamic motion. And could I justify that there was a value to it other than I just want to engage and interest you for 30 seconds? No. There was no... I mean, there were dynamic moments where a character was saying something or somebody was saying the catchphrase of the commercial and you'd push in on them, or there were dramatic emphasis moments. But basically, anything I could do to keep the camera in motion dynamically for 30 seconds just to strike people and grab their attention and make them go, whoa, this looks great. It didn't change the content. It didn't do anything. It just looked really, really good. And I think Michael Bay would be proud. I think Michael Bay would be... I need to have that on a t-shirt. Yeah. We're going to Michael Bay the shit out of this.
Gil made the point earlier, too, that when you're when you've got that 30 frames per second or that style that looks like video or the lack of lighting or whatever, that people are just like, well, wait, this doesn't look like the big films. And the general audience, they're not going to know why it doesn't feel right. They're just going to know it doesn't feel right. That there's something that's off.
Right.
Again, like you were saying, whether there's no atmosphere in it, it's too clean, it's too sharp, it moves differently.
We've trained the audience over 100 years. Like, that's a long time. If you're a child and you're going to see your first movie, it's overwhelming. But over time, you know what to expect. In fact, I love going back and watching kind of independent or low-budget films that was trying to emulate, let's say, something like Star Wars. And you go in there, and the first thing I go is I can tell from the first 2-3 minutes what the budget was of the film and what they were trying to do, because of the way it's set up. And I go, fantastic. I recently showed a cousin of mine who's 20 years my junior, Jaws. And he was like, this is boring. What's going on? This is boring.
I am going to punch him in the throat.
Right. And I said, hang in there. Hang in there. I said, I'll never show you something that's garbage. Even if you think it's garbage, there'll be a reason why. And luckily I have that reputation with a few people who go, wow, I thought this was nonsense. And then, I realized why you're showing it to me. And once everything started happening, once he was invested in the characters, he was on board for the ride, and what a ride it is. And I asked him afterwards, I'm like, would you watch it again? He's like, no. And then like 2 days later, he came back. He goes, I was thinking about that film. I was thinking about what I would do. Like if I was on a pontoon trying to get back to land in this big shark. And I go, that's a film. If you're thinking about it afterwards, if it's got you, doing more than just getting up in the, after an hour and a half and going, I ate some popcorn, that's it. That was just a waste of time. And I don't see that interaction with a lot of the films in the last 10 or 15 years.
That's one of my criteria. Whether I leave a theater saying I really liked that or I didn't like that, if 2 days later I'm still thinking about the movie, then I feel like it was a good film, that it was successful in my mind.
The digital technology is emerging. The cameras are getting slightly better.
In the early 2000s.
In the early 2000s. And I know for my own purposes, I was keeping it, because, I wasn't making my own feature films in Hollywood, and I wanted to make my own feature films. So I'm kind of watching the digital technology to see where it's going, because I know how much more affordable it is. I know that I can make my own film projects this way. I know eventually I'm going to have a computer and I'm going to have my own editing, my nonlinear editing system at home. And then in the meantime, we've talked a little about the digital breakthroughs in the industry where, things were starting to happen. I think on the one hand, digital technology became more available to everyone. And especially now today, everyone has access to digital technology. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, literally everything you're dealing with right now, be it your cell phone, your computer, your television, your streaming services, just about any form of communication or visual input, short of reading an actual book. I mean, a Kindle is a digital device. Yeah. You're getting a digital file that you're looking at on a reader. So much of your world has become digital now. So, and you have to understand, digital 20, 25 years ago was a very limited thing. You still had an actual physical phone that picked up a signal and was an analog speaker system that you listened to, and you weren't reading anything on a screen, and your TV was still getting an over-the-air analog signal. So you may be a little confused about the digital revolution, but no, you went from like 4 or 5% of your world was digital, the turn of the last century, to now, 85% of your input is digital. But the film industry did it too. Hey, this is Wyatt from the Cinematic Perspective podcast. If you've been listening to the podcast, then you know that Gayle and I are part of a company called Pirate Pictures, and we make movies. So I wanted to take a moment and tell you about some of the movies we've made and how you can see them. My first feature film as a writer-director was Shadowland. It's the story of a vampire that was staked through the heart, buried, and left for dead in 1897, but then is accidentally uncovered and awakened in modern day. Laura, the vampire, suffers from amnesia and has no idea who she is, or even that she is a vampire. Shadowland is an independent film that was shot in the St. Louis area, and I'm very proud of it. You can buy or rent Shadowland at piratemediagroup.net.
If you've got time to kill and you want to be a bit of a rat bag, go into a phone store and ask for a phone that just works as a phone. I don't want a camera in it. I don't want to surf the internet. All I want is the feature of the phone, and see what answer you get.
That's like going into an auto store.
Yeah.
It's like going into an auto dealership and saying, I don't want a car with a computer because I don't want to deal with the computer problems. I want a car that has hand crank windows that go up and down so that
Same
doesn't
thing.
break. I want a stereo
The push buttons.
with the push buttons so that it will get FM and AM radio stations. I don't want... You can't.
Yeah.
You can't do it. Give me
You can.
give me a
we've,
clock.
We've gone and rented cars, and you can't get a car with a CD player in it anymore. Everything's all just got the USB port.
We'll be in a rental car and pull out our phones, and all of a sudden the dashboard will start lighting up because the dashboard of the car is pairing to our phone. It's like, no, I don't stay away from my phone. I didn't, yeah. Because everybody else just automatically goes, well, yeah, pair my device, do this, interconnect, plug me into the system. Ugh.
We're dinosaurs. We don't
We're
want that.
dinosaurs. We're old.
I got into I think it was like a Mercedes someone was driving, and my phone tried to pair to the Mercedes, and on my iPhone it said, your iPhone will not work with this accessory. And it's only Apple that would say that, like, you know, $125,000 car is an accessory for the iPhone. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, that's my phone.
It's not the other way. It's, yeah.
But you got the wrong car.
My track phone was like, oh, dude, your track phone is way too cheap for this car. Your track phone is way... So, going back to the film stuff, you know, we've talked a little about the digital revolution in other episodes, I think, regarding seeing the digital effects. Like, you started getting peppers of digital effects, salt and pepper splashes here and there in the 80s of a digital effect here, a digital effect there. Then, of course, Jurassic Park came along. There were a couple other films, but Jurassic Park was just kind of like, you all have to have digital miracles now. And then all throughout the 90s, it started to go. But then in 1999, right on that century cusp there, you got a couple of things that happened that year. And one of them was, for better or worse, The Phantom Menace.
Right.
Because the digital backlot truly arrived. And George Lucas showed us, look, I don't have to be in some big, huge set somewhere. I can be on a green screen
I don't have to go to
stage.
Tunisia or whatever.
I can be here. And it didn't always look great, but he really did kind of draw a new line and say, okay, from here on out. And then the same year, The Matrix came out, which showed us things we'd never seen before. But then I think one started driving the other. Like, the digital technology surged forward so quickly. I know I'm a practical guy. We've talked in other episodes. I was raised on a steady diet of miniatures, you know, real explosions, real gunfire effects, blood squibs, physical makeup that you put on people. I was raised in a physical, practical world. And that's what my training's in. So that's what I'm comfortable with. That's what I like. I would also argue that in a lot of cases, that still looks better. That still looks good. But as the digital effects increased and as the films progressed, you went from, wow, 500 shots, 500 effect shots. That's a lot of effect shots. Then it was 1,200 effect shots. Wow, oh my God. Now you go to a film like, you know, Avengers Endgame, which has,
500 not
2,500, maybe 3,000 visual effect shots. Yeah, there's more effect shots than there are non-processed shots. And now there's a lot of shots, like the Pirates of the Caribbean films. Mad Max Fury Road. Mad Max Fury Road, I think every shot in that film has been digitally manipulated, digitally colored. It's a very heavy practical effects film, but people misunderstand.
Sure.
There were a lot of practical elements in it, but there was so much digital processing, color processing, day for night, speed changes, color changes. And that makes it that much harder for people like us.
The shame with Fury Road was the one thing that needed to be digitally altered wasn't. And that was the script. They went to a place, turned around and came back. I was like, what? Like, again, visually, and I had this conversation with someone I was working with who was 20 years old, and he goes, Mad Max Fury Road, greatest film that was ever made. And I looked at him and go watch Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior.
Yeah.
Yeah, you saw all the visuals, it was sparking those parts in your brain. It was like, wow, this is cool. But story-wise, there wasn't much there. Same thing happened with the second Matrix. I remember the second Matrix premiered in Australia. The news was out, doing a live cross to people coming out of the theater for the very first time. And they were saying to people, what's it like? And they were like, it's amazing. It's fantastic. And the reporter went, what's it about? And the person goes, I have no idea.
Yeah. The second Matrix film needed to be kicked in the balls. It really did.
But it made no sense.
You can't keep turning up the volume, though. You reach a maximum. And I think The Matrix said, great concept, amazing visuals. This is a marriage. It works. The Matrix Reloaded. Matrix Reloaded, the second one, was, we're going to take all the stuff we gave you in the first one and make it even bigger and better and faster and crazier. And I didn't care. There's some technical stuff in it that I freaking love, but I wasn't emotionally involved. I didn't care.
I actually remember going into seeing it like the second or third time with a notepad and writing down dialogue because I was like, I'm missing
Only
something
you, Gayle.
here.
Only you. Anyway.
And I literally, like, the lights come up and I'm reading like the dialogue with the old man and Neo at the end. And someone goes, oh, what did that mean? And I go, I don't know. I write this shit and I don't understand what it means. Like, I was like, I have no idea how this ties in with the rest of the story. And I mean, this is where the spectacle is way more important than the narrative. And this is the shame of it, at least how I felt. And you can see that going on with the way visual effects crews are definitely treated, especially digital ones. Producers like to spend money to hire people and put in computer consoles to say, look at all these people who are working for me. They won't spend the same money on a writer and give it to actually craft the story in a way that flows and works really well.
Gil, you were talking earlier about the brain sparking and just the effects, the dazzle. And I wonder if when we as audience members are sitting in these movies that there is so much stuff going on, if there's not like an endorphin release happening, if we're not
Absolutely.
just being, I don't know, if we don't get the high from that. But then, then you stop and you think about it and you're like, well, I don't know what the hell that was about. We talk about my inability to remember films after we've left them, that I watch a movie and a week later I'm like, I don't remember that part.
So the way your cell phone works is the same. It works on the same principle as film and visual effects, as well as we have in Australia poker machines that like light up when you hit something. It's all on the reward kind of process that goes on in your brain.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, but my favorite 18 minutes of visual effects cinema magic is the Battle on Hoth with the snow walkers and the snow speeders. I don't care. Some people go, that's boring. That's fine. But for me, there was an interest in it, watching it for the very first time, going, I've never seen anything like that. You had these snow speeders going, like fighting these gigantic kind of elephants that were walking around. There's all this, shooting going on. Things were exploding. And I remember as a kid going, this is amazing. Like we saw them in space and now, they're on this ice planet doing it. And then as I got older and started breaking down those shots, I became even more enamored of what they were able to create. That's created like an emotional memory for me that is tied into all those little things sparking off in my brain. And filmmakers are well aware of it. They're well aware of if we can take them on a ride. That's why people went and saw The Matrix Reloaded 3 or 4 or 5 times, like me, with notepads going, the story doesn't make any sense, but wow.
If you can't dazzle them with brilliance,
yeah.
If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, you could baffle them with bullshit.
I spent a bit of time away from Hollywood and cinema, and I always laughed that I took some time and I went to Israel and I started learning all the old ancient texts. And I always laughed to myself because it was then that I learned the greatest film that I ever wanted to make. I always, when I write scripts and things, I would always try to make them meaningful, and I always try to give the audience something that they could kind of grow on a little bit, that they could take and be able to work forward from. And when I was learning this, I realized if you want to make a successful film, you have to put spectacular distraction in it. And that's unfortunately how I feel the visual effects industry has moved. It's no longer about supporting the narrative. It's about putting this spectacular distraction in there that will keep the audience wondering, well, I'm engaged in this moment. What's going to happen the next moment? I think the Disney Star Wars films are very, very embedded in, okay, the story doesn't work, especially for the last two. Let's just keep putting some amazing visuals out there, and we'll throw in characters that they know, and they'll just keep going with it. And to me, that's not the power of cinema.
There's times though in some of these big epic films that the overload is too much for me. Like,
absolutely.
I hate to say this, but there was this portion of Dune a couple of weeks ago when we saw it that I fell asleep in the movie theater, and it was the big battle. And I don't know if that's just my brain going, this is too much, just close your eyes. And it's not that it's, oh my God, this is too graphic. It's just, there's so much input and it goes on so long and it's just like, whoa. So
well, you still have to be able to follow a story. You still have to be able to follow action.
Personally, I think that you didn't have a emotional connection to the characters in the battle. So for you, the battle had no meaning.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to leave it there, because if you guys are more interested in how I feel about Dune, go and check out the Cinema Perspective episode about Dune. Because I actually had a fight with my partner. We went for dinner and someone said, Dune's not out here in Australia. We don't talk about how I've seen it. But someone else was like, I didn't like the 84 Dune. And my partner went, yes, I didn't like it either. And I said, we have to have a talk. We have to talk. Our relationship might have just ended right there. But yeah, what you're actually talking about, I don't know if it's just about the kind of the spectacle that's going on, but the people who are going to live or die in that battle, if you're falling asleep, it doesn't really matter.
Well, I didn't even know who the bad guys were in that particular battle. But anyway, but you know what? There's a lot of movies that have that kind of a thing where it's like, oh my gosh, we have to have the bigger, better, more massive battle scene. And I don't know if it's because I'm a girl and I don't care or what it is. But like, what was my phrase for a couple of the Lord of the Rings movies? Oh, I thought there was going to be some fighting in this.
It was the Two Towers. Wasn't there going to be fighting in this?
Yeah. Wasn't there going to be walking and then fighting?
There's this walking. The trees walked in that film. I mean, that there's all they walked and they walked back.
Bringing this all back to the digital thing again, it's interesting because what this has kind of done is this has enabled and limited us at the same time. It's weird because about 2006. I was in Los Angeles up to about 2006. I'd been there nearly 20 years. And I had taken a good look around. I had seen what the technology was doing. We had the Canon XL1S. And then a friend of mine, Robert Clark, here in St. Louis, he basically had a production company. He invited me to come back from Los Angeles and be part of the production company. He extended the invite to several people who weren't interested. But I was so disgusted with Los Angeles due to the expense, the traffic, and a lot of different things. I just wanted to make films. And I could see that digital would allow me to do that and do it much less expensively.
In the Midwest.
In the Midwest, but I didn't have to be in LA anymore. And I was noticing that. That was one of the notes I was taking throughout the early 2000s is, okay, they're shooting digitally over here. They're shooting digitally in Chicago. They're shooting digitally in Atlanta. They're shooting digitally in, Louisiana and Michigan. And they're shooting digitally all these places. TV is posting more digitally. TV is shooting more digitally. We're starting to get digital films. Even films that we're shooting on film, like the Pirates of the Caribbean, we're still posting digital and sending out digital files to the theaters. I thought, okay, the time has come. So I came back to St. Louis. I joined forces with Robert Clark. Gayle and I got involved in the company together and then got involved and got married over time. So now I'm back in the Midwest and I'm making films and I have access. I have a camera, I have editing systems, I have lighting equipment, I have access. So I've been enabled to finally do filmmaking at my own pace, in my own way. Meanwhile, film budgets are going 100, 150 million, 200 million, 250 million, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the number of effects is going up. And suddenly, despite the fact that I'm probably capable of making a modern day classic, I don't know that I can get the attention. I don't know that I can. If you have a multiplex and Avengers Endgame is in theater 1,
and 2 and 7 and
and
9.
1 and 2 and 7 and 9, and my film is in one of them, and my film is, blah blah blah.
If you can even get it into the multiplex.
Right, just because of the politics.
If you're not bought out by Disney and all the rest of because we had that problem here in Australia, where we could not get 2 screenings for a film that we made here.
We've had that here in St. Louis too.
Yeah.
That if
we know a digital. I feel like we've talked about this before,
yeah.
but we knew a manager of a theater here in St. Louis, and he was like, "Dude, I want to show your films. I want to show all the local films." And he showed our features, but what he was under legal obligation to screen studio films a certain number of times per day, which he could do. But he realized that if he changed the screening times and shuffled movies to different theaters, he could still meet his legal obligations, but then have open slots for local films. Well, eventually the studios found out about this, and they complained, and the parent company fired him. He literally lost his job as the manager of the theater because he wanted to screen indie films locally.
Hi, it's Gayle. And if pickleball is your kind of fun, let me introduce you to Backhanded Compliments. It's a brand I started with my niece Evie, and it began as a project she was doing in college for a design class. But when I saw the art, I knew we had to do something more with it. So we launched Backhanded Compliments, which is irreverent pickleball apparel for the passive-aggressive pickleball player. We've got graphic tees with phrases on them like, "That was so good for a beginner," or "Make me a sandwich or get out of the kitchen." You can find everything at backhandedpickleball.com. Be sure to use promo code podcast for 15% off your first order.
So now we're making digital films, and we're having, we're creatively satisfied, and we're having a lot of fun, and we're pushing our craft, but I can't in any way, shape, I don't even try to compete.
But, okay, there's a couple things that I want to touch on too. One is how we got digital files or our movies shown. And like one example that came to my mind was the evolution for us of our 48-hour film projects. So 48-hour film project is this contest where literally you make a movie in 48 hours, and
which wouldn't have even been possible prior to the digital era.
Right.
Absolutely.
But when we started that, what was it, 2006, that we did our first one?
Yeah.
That we were still shooting on tape, and then we had to capture the tape into the computer, and inevitably there was some issue with that, and you get the delays, and then having to, spend 30 hours working on the edit process, and then outputting it. And what were we doing? Were we outputting to tape initially?
No, I think we had to deliver them a DVD.
Yeah, so...
Which can be its own horrible process, depending.
Then trying to, create the DVD file and then output that. And then now, people are just pushing a button and uploading their MP4s to the delivery aspect of it. So just that...
You can edit your film on your phone. I have a piece of software that... LumaFusion, which will allow me to film and edit on my phone. And I'm not talking about just sliding 2 clips together, and I can do everything that I do on Final Cut Pro on an iPad or an iPhone. And I'm like, and then send it straight out to YouTube or some sort of delivery system. And it's like, wow, like this has really come of age when it comes to digital. And that's, the idea of having a whole film studio in your phone. Again, you buy a phone so you can call people up, but the majority of times, that's not what I'm using it for.
Another thing with using the 48-hour film project as an example was, we never did this. I thought about it, but we never did this. But there was another team locally that, because the entire thing has to be filmed in that particular 48 hours, they wanted to show something that was more epic than just what could be done in St. Louis. So they recruited filmmakers that they knew in Europe and in Mexico.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Those people filmed and were able to upload files that these guys were able to download. So they had this video, this short film that took place all over the world. And that to me was amazing, that you could do that within a couple of hours as well.
We went on in later years to become judges for the 48-hour film project for a few years here in St. Louis. And I remember one film, moving forward in time, was done entirely on a drone, which is kind of a gimmick.
A single shot.
But it basically was it was like an 8-minute long single shot, and they rehearsed it all day, all evening Friday, and then they shot it all day Saturday. And basically, an establishing shot, they come in on the building, they follow people talking, they go inside the building, several things happen inside the building, and you go outside for a chase sequence, and it ends with a big epic wide shot. And they were doing brilliant things, like one of the guys was catching the drone and then carrying it through and doing handheld shots, and then at a certain point he'd let the drone go and it would take off. And whether that was a valid filmmaking technique or whether it amounted in a good film, just that technology from 2006, when we were still capturing tape,
on a big old camera,
to 2016, when guys were able to shoot something digitally in one shot on a drone. I mean, my God.
Talking about technology and cameras and things, something we haven't touched upon, but I do want to bring it into the conversation, is that now if you buy a camera, if you buy either a digital SLR camera or even what they call a camcorder, which is still not to tape but to digital, you now have built into that the ability to send those files wirelessly or through Bluetooth to a computer or to a phone, or which can work almost like an external monitor. I mean, the technology there is just mind-blowing, because I remember getting excited to work with a camera that had a video tap on it. Oh my God, I can look at what's going on
and put it on a monitor.
Yeah, one of the reasons that really inspired me to work as a cinematographer was that I wanted to get my eye through the eyepiece to see what was going on, right? And on an independent film, the director never gets a chance to do that. The camera operator does, or the cinematographer, because it's usually the same person. And then when I went on to directing, I remember my DP on one of my productions used to get really pissy at me because I would look through and actually operate the camera, because it's my job. And I was like, yes, it is. And then when he understood where I was coming from, he was like, cool, no problems. I understand what was going on. What I was worried about was that if the shot didn't work out, you'd blame me. And and that's my responsibility. And I was like, cool. And I think he brought in a video tap, and he's like, if I give you a monitor, are you cool with that? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. But we didn't have that. I think in the end he just borrowed one or something from someone for a few days. And at that point we got along like a house on fire. So, the idea, I think I've always said this to a lot of independent filmmakers: if you're not behind the camera, or if you're not looking at what's being shot, don't, at the level of what you're working at, it's imperative you do, because everything is on your shoulders. So, if you're in a cinema, if you're in a industry role, hey, that's fine. If you've had time to develop the imagery that you need with your DP, you've storyboarded the whole thing, everyone knows what's going on, not a problem. But you have these famous images even from films where the actors are looking through the eyepiece, the director's looking through the eyepiece, because that's your ability to understand what you're crafting. I've even seen directors who go, they shot this footage, we'll just work with it. And you're like, why are you not crafting? Like, it's part of it. It's not just working with the actors. It's actually being able to get what you need to tell the story.
It's one thing that I point out to people who come to visit us on set when we are filming something. And actually, I think you just sort of posted an example of this on Facebook the other day, that you walk into the set and you see what it all looks like.
And it's a big mess.
And then you look through the camera and you see what the camera sees, and it's entirely different. So,
right.
Yeah, I can't imagine a director who's willing to not see what's going on in the camera.
All of this behind me, if we were to pan this camera down, this room is a storage room. It is literally stuff on the floor all the way to the ceiling. But I'm trying to craft this little area here to make it a little interesting, a little visual, just so that it's amazing what you can see. And I love those behind the scenes shots where there's a flat maybe of a wall, and behind the wall is, they're outside because the sun's the greatest lighting source. And, it's not even in a building. and you're like, oh my gosh, it's, and a lot of people don't realize that. I see independent and first-time filmmakers that because they've seen films and the environment is created, they create the whole environment. And I go, why you got this corner here that you spend so much time? You're not going to use it.
It's fun to see, like, a monster in someone's face, and then you go to the behind-the-scenes shot, and there's a hand sticking in the back of the monster. I mean, there's a ring light right up here giving us this nice hair light. There's a big, huge, like a 2x3 soft box right up here, and there's another ring light over there, and this all looks very pretty, and the rest of this is interesting, but there's gear all over the place. So for me, what started to happen, and one of the things that happened in St. Louis when I came back to St. Louis from LA.
Oh, you're bringing us back to topic?
I am bringing us back to topic, shockingly enough.
I think this conversation isn't over. I think we've gone back into our passion of filmmaking.
Yeah.
But I think we should do another episode.
Oh, no, we're totally doing another episode.
I want to hear 2000, your experiences using digital technology on your own projects for the first time. And I've got some things that I want to share. So, I love the conversation we're having. I don't want to stop that. But I think there's more in it. I don't want to squeeze it into the next 5 minutes.
Oh, there's absolutely more in it. It's us. It's us. It's us.
Let me just take this moment to invite you guys to hit that subscribe button and to follow us on whatever platform that you're listening to this podcast. Or if you're over at YouTube watching the video, feel free to hit that thumbs up. Give us a subscribe so other people can come around the table and talk all about cinema. We also love your feedback, so feel free to get us on all the different social media platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. We love to hear about anything that resonates with you about what we're talking about here. Because you know what? Cinema's our passion. And until next time, where I'm going to hear all about Wyatt's digital filmmaking adventures, and I'm going to share my own. Go film something, and we will see you here for the next cinematic perspective.